The sun was dipping low behind the hills, casting long golden rays across the cobbled square. At its center, an old stone fountain whispered as water cascaded in gentle streams, sparkling in the evening light. It was a place where secrets lingered, where strangers' eyes met and lingered a moment too long, where the city seemed to pause just to let desire breathe. Elena walked through the square, her steps light and deliberate. The soft sway of her dress seemed to echo the fountain's rhythm, and the warm breeze played with the loose strands of her hair. She had come to the city for the exhibition, but somehow, the fountain called to her, pulling her attention away from the gallery signs and art posters. She approached the edge of the fountain, resting her fingers lightly on the cool stone. Around her, the square began to hum with evening activity, the distant sound of laughter, clinking glasses from nearby cafes, and the soft notes of a violin played by a street musician. But all of it seemed to fade as she focused on the water. The fountain shimmered under the amber glow, and in that moment, Elena felt a strange, thrilling tension in the air. From the other side, someone else approached. He was tall, with dark hair that caught the last light of the day, and eyes that seemed to notice everything yet reveal nothing. He paused at the fountain, watching her with a curiosity that felt like a gentle challenge. "Beautiful evening," he said, his voice calm but magnetic, as if each word was measured to draw her attention. Elena looked up, startled for a moment, then smiled softly. "Yes, it's perfect," she replied, feeling an unexpected flutter in her chest. The stranger's gaze held hers longer than was usual for strangers. He moved closer, slow and deliberate, but never crossing the invisible line of comfort. "Do you believe in moments like this?" he asked, almost rhetorically, "where everything feels possible?" Elena's breath caught slightly. There was something about the way he spoke, a mixture of certainty and mystery, that made her pulse quicken. I'd like to," she admitted. "I'd like to believe." They stood silently for a moment, letting the fountain's music fill the space between them. A soft wind lifted leaves around their feet, and she felt the brush of it against her arm, almost like a shared secret. "I'm Marco," he finally said, holding out his hand. It wasn't just a greeting, it was an invitation. Elena hesitated for a fraction of a second, then placed her hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle, sending a subtle thrill through her fingers. "Elena," she whispered. "Elena," he repeated, tasting her name like it held a story he wanted to read. The sky above them deepened into shades of violet and pink, and the first stars began to appear. The fountain, bathed in the soft glow of lanterns now, looked like something out of a dream. And in that fleeting, golden moment, both of them knew that this meeting, strange, unexpected, and yet inevitable, was the beginning of something neither could ignore. Marco leaned slightly closer, just enough that Elena felt the warmth of his presence. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet electricity of being noticed, truly noticed. She could feel her heart responding, a gentle pull that felt like desire in its purest, most innocent form. "Would you walk with me?" he asked. His eyes searched hers, waiting. Elena hesitated, then nodded, feeling a thrill of anticipation run through her. As they stepped away from the fountain together, the city around them seemed to blur, leaving only the sound of water and the promise of an evening that could change everything. And so, by the fountain where time seemed to slow, desire stirred quietly, waiting to see where it might lead. The evening air had grown cooler, carrying with it the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the garden paths nearby. Elena followed Marco along the narrow cobbled streets, their footsteps blending with the soft murmur of the city. Each step felt deliberate, charged with an unspoken excitement, as if the world itself was holding its breath around them. "Do you come here often?" Elena asked, attempting casual conversation, though her heart beat faster than she expected. Marco smiled, a subtle curve of his lips that suggested amusement and mystery in equal measure. "I have my moments. But the fountain, it always draws me back. There's something timeless about it. Something, almost alive." Elena glanced back over her shoulder at the fountain, now glowing faintly under the lantern lights. She understood what he meant. There was a serenity to it, yet a hidden energy, like it was quietly aware of the stories unfolding around it. Her own story, perhaps, was beginning here, in this very square. They walked in companionable silence for a few blocks, passing cafes with soft music spilling into the streets, and art shops with displays glowing in golden light. Marco's presence beside her was magnetic, neither overwhelming nor intrusive, but it made her aware of every small detail: the brush of his sleeve against her arm, the way his gaze occasionally flicked to her profile, and the warmth that radiated subtly from him. Finally, they arrived at a small courtyard, tucked away behind an ornate wooden gate. A few benches were scattered beneath an array of flowering vines, and a soft fountain murmured quietly in the center. Marco stopped and gestured toward one of the benches. "Shall we sit?" he asked. Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. They settled side by side, leaving just enough space to respect each other's presence while still sharing an unspoken closeness. The fountain before them added its gentle soundtrack, the water reflecting the soft glow of nearby lanterns. For a while, neither spoke. The air was filled with the quiet intimacy of two people discovering one another in a space that seemed both private and suspended in time. Then Marco spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "Have you ever met someone, Elena, and felt as though the universe nudged you in their direction? As though every choice, every step, somehow led you to this single moment?" Elena considered his words, her eyes tracing the rippling water. I'm not sure," she admitted. "I've had fleeting moments, maybe. But this, meeting you, feels different. Unexpected, yet somehow, inevitable." Marco's gaze softened. "I feel the same. There's a strange clarity in your presence. As if the world narrows down to just this square, just this fountain, just this connection." He let the word linger between them, as if savoring its significance. A gentle breeze swept through, lifting a few strands of Elena's hair across her face. Marco reached instinctively, tucking them behind her ear, his fingers brushing her skin ever so lightly. The contact sent a shiver down her spine, a silent acknowledgement of the tension growing between them. Elena's eyes met his, searching, curious, and something unspoken passed in that gaze, an acknowledgement of desire, of longing, without a word being said. It was exhilarating and tender at once. "I'm glad we met tonight," Elena whispered, almost to herself, yet Marco heard. He smiled, leaning just slightly closer. "So am I," he said softly. The air between them seemed to pulse with anticipation, every sound, every splash of water, every distant laugh heightened by the quiet intensity of the moment. They lingered there, letting the evening stretch endlessly. Marco spoke of the city, of small streets he loved, of hidden places where time slowed. Elena listened, captivated not just by his words, but by the way he spoke, calm, deliberate, with an undertone of warmth that made her feel seen, truly seen. As the lanterns flickered and the night grew deeper, their hands brushed, then rested side by side on the bench. Neither pulled away. It was a simple, intimate gesture, but in the quiet of the courtyard, It carried a weight that both of them felt deeply. The fountain before them seemed to murmur encouragement, its water catching the moonlight in dancing patterns. In that shared silence, Elena realized that desire wasn't always loud or urgent. It could be gentle, insistent, and quietly persistent. And tonight, by the fountain, it had found her. For the first time that evening, Elena allowed herself to fully surrender to the moment. To the unknown. To the subtle, undeniable pull between herself and Marco. And as they sat there, side by side, the city around them fading into shadows and soft light, a promise lingered in the air, one of curiosity, longing, and a desire neither could yet name, but both already felt deep in their hearts. The night had settled fully over the city, blanketing the streets in a soft, velvety darkness that made every lantern glow seem like a private beacon. Elena and Marco walked slowly, side by side, along the winding alleys that led away from the hidden courtyard. Their earlier silence had given way to an easy conversation, filled with small revelations and shy laughter. "You speak of the city as if you've known it your whole life," Elena said, glancing at him with curiosity. "Do you travel often?" Marco shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "Not really. I explore, yes, but I've never left my heart behind in another city. There's something about this place, it feels like it has layers, stories hidden beneath the stones, waiting for someone to notice." Elena felt a shiver of connection. She understood that feeling, the way some places seemed alive with untold stories, as if they were inviting her to step closer and uncover them. And tonight, somehow, Marco seemed entwined with those stories, as though he, too, belonged to the city's secret heart. They turned a corner, and the sound of water drew them toward another fountain tucked into a small, shadowed square. Marco paused, watching the water sparkle in the moonlight. "Two fountains in one evening," he murmured, amusement in his voice. "Perhaps it's a sign." Elena smiled, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "A sign of what?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of possibility," he replied, looking at her with a gaze that seemed to see straight into her thoughts. "Of things that might be, if we allow them." Her heart fluttered at his words. There was no rush, no pressure, only a gentle, magnetic pull that made her want to lean closer, to stay in this moment indefinitely. Marco motioned toward the fountain. "Sit with me again." Elena hesitated briefly, then nodded. They perched on the edge of the fountain, their shoulders brushing lightly. The water gurgled quietly beneath them, carrying a soft rhythm that seemed to echo the beat of her heart. For a while, they spoke of lighter things, the city, favorite books, music that lingered in memory, but the air between them remained charged. Every glance lingered a moment too long, every brush of hands felt deliberate, as if testing the boundaries of closeness without breaking them. At one point, Marco reached instinctively for her hand. This time, Elena didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined naturally, and a thrill ran through her that made her pulse quicken. It was a subtle, electric connection, quiet yet undeniable. "Have you ever felt this way before?" Marco asked quietly, his thumb tracing small circles over her knuckles. "A sense of recognition, as if someone could understand you without words." Elena considered, her gaze fixed on the shimmering water. I think I have," she admitted. "But never like this. Not so present. Not so consuming." He leaned slightly closer, his breath brushing her cheek. "Consuming in a good way?" he asked, his tone teasing but soft. Elena laughed quietly, a sound that felt lighter than air in the still night. Yes, in a good way." The wind stirred, carrying the scent of nearby flowers, mingling with the subtle warmth of their closeness. The city seemed to fade around them, leaving only the fountain, the moonlight, and the shared intimacy that neither wanted to name but both felt. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Marco spoke softly of dreams, small and large, and Elena found herself sharing more than she had intended: hopes, quiet wishes, and the unspoken desire for connection that had brought her here tonight. With every word, every glance, every touch of their hands, the world outside their small square seemed to disappear. Finally, Marco's voice softened. "Elena, may I be honest?" She nodded, her heartbeat quickening. "I want to know you," he said simply. "Not just tonight, not just in passing. I want to see where this spark between us can lead. I want to share moments, however small, however fleeting. But I want them with you." Elena felt warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of excitement and tenderness. I feel the same," she admitted, her voice gentle yet firm. The water of the fountain glistened beneath them, reflecting the moonlight like tiny stars scattered across its surface. For the first time, Elena allowed herself to surrender fully to the moment, not just the magic of the night, but to the quiet pull of desire, curiosity, and the promise of something more. They remained there, side by side, fingers intertwined, letting the city hum softly around them. Desire, Elena realized, wasn't always urgent or loud. It could be patient, tender, and intoxicating in its subtlety. And tonight, by the fountain, it had taken root, promising more, whispering of connections yet to be explored, of moments yet to be discovered. The streets had quieted further as midnight approached, leaving only the soft murmur of the city's sleeping heart. Elena and Marco wandered through narrow lanes lit by amber lanterns, the glow painting their faces with a warm intimacy. The night seemed to wrap around them, carrying a sense of privacy and secrecy, as though the city itself approved of their presence together. "You know," Elena began, brushing a stray hair from her face, "I never expected an evening like this when I came to the city." Marco's eyes flicked toward her, dark and amused. "Neither did I. But sometimes, the unexpected becomes the most memorable." She smiled, feeling a flutter of excitement she couldn't fully explain. There was something effortless about being with him, the way he spoke, the way he listened, the subtle attentiveness that made her feel noticed in ways she hadn't realized she craved. They arrived at a small bridge spanning a quiet canal, its surface reflecting the moon like a silver ribbon. Marco leaned against the stone railing, glancing at her with an expression that balanced curiosity and admiration. "Sit with me," he asked, and Elena joined him on the edge, their legs dangling over the water. The cool night air touched her skin, and she leaned slightly closer, feeling the warmth of his presence beside her. The bridge was silent except for the gentle lapping of water below and the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by the breeze. Elena felt her chest lift with anticipation. It was more than attraction, more than curiosity. It was a quiet desire that had grown with every shared glance, every subtle touch, every word spoken in the soft intimacy of the night. "Do you ever feel," Marco began, his voice low, "that some moments are meant to be savored slowly, like a story unfolding?" Elena looked at him, intrigued. "Yes. I do. I think that's how I feel right now, like time itself has slowed just for this evening." Marco smiled, leaning slightly closer. "Then let's not rush it." His fingers brushed hers, deliberately slow, a light contact that sent a shiver through her. The touch was simple, almost casual, yet charged with a quiet intensity. Elena felt herself leaning closer instinctively. The night had a way of magnifying small sensations: the warmth of his hand, the scent of his hair, the way his gaze held hers without words. It was intimate, electric, and somehow safe, allowing her to surrender to the moment without fear. "You have a way of making the city feel different," Elena murmured, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Like it's ours for the night." Marco's gaze softened. "Perhaps it is. And perhaps it's not just the city. Perhaps it's the company that makes it feel this way." A gentle silence settled between them, filled with possibilities. Elena felt the weight of unspoken words, the subtle tension that had been building since their first meeting at the fountain. Desire, she realized, wasn't just about longing, it was about connection, intimacy, and the quiet thrill of knowing someone might understand the parts of you you usually keep hidden. Marco's hand moved slightly, brushing the back of hers. It was an invitation, gentle and deliberate. Elena accepted it, allowing her fingers to intertwine with his. The contact was brief but meaningful, a silent acknowledgement of their growing closeness. "I've never felt this way before," Elena confessed softly, almost shyly. "Not so quickly, not so consuming." "Nor have I," Marco admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels right. Like we were meant to meet tonight, like the city itself guided us to this moment." Elena's heart swelled with a mixture of excitement and tenderness. She realized that desire didn't always need to be fiery or urgent, it could be quiet, patient, and deeply satisfying in its subtlety. And tonight, with Marco beside her, it was more vivid than anything she had imagined. They sat there, side by side on the bridge, letting the night stretch endlessly. The water reflected their shared presence like a secret mirror, and the cool breeze carried the scent of flowers and the promise of tomorrow. Elena felt a thrill she hadn't known before, a sense of anticipation, curiosity, and longing all entwined in a single, delicate moment. "Shall we return to the fountain?" Marco asked after a while, a playful light in his eyes. Elena nodded, a smile curving her lips. "I think it's time." And as they rose and walked back through the quiet city streets, the fountain awaited them, its water shimmering like a witness to their desire, their connection, and the unspoken promise that the night had only just begun. The fountain's gentle gurgle welcomed them back like an old friend. Elena felt a strange comfort in its presence, as if returning here meant stepping into a world where the night was theirs alone. Lanterns cast soft halos over the square, and the water shimmered like liquid silver, reflecting the anticipation in her own heart. Marco led her to the stone edge again, and they settled side by side, close enough that their shoulders brushed. The warmth of his presence felt grounding, yet it stirred something tender and electric within her. They didn't speak immediately, instead, they listened to the water, the night, the subtle hum of a city that slept around them while they existed in a bubble of quiet intimacy. After a few moments, Marco spoke softly. "Do you believe in serendipity, Elena?" Elena tilted her head, considering. "I think I want to. Especially tonight. It feels like chance led me here, but it also feels intentional." Marco's eyes met hers, dark and intense in the lantern glow. "Sometimes, the universe nudges you toward what you need even when you don't know it yet." Elena's heart fluttered. She could feel the truth in his words, the way the evening had unfolded, each step leading them closer together. Something in the air pressed lightly against her skin, a soft promise of connection that neither had yet dared to name but both felt acutely. "You have a way of seeing people," she said after a moment, her voice quieter than she intended. "As if you can understand them in ways they can't even see themselves." Marco's smile was gentle, almost vulnerable. Perhaps it's easier with someone who wants to be seen. You've been open, Elena. And it's not often I meet someone who makes me feel that way. Her fingers brushed his lightly, a gesture that felt instinctive. The contact was small, yet it held attention neither could ignore. Desire, she realized, was often in the subtleties, the lingering look, the brush of a hand, the quiet intimacy of shared space. May I ask you something personal? Marco's voice was careful, hesitant even, as if weighing his own vulnerability. Elena nodded. Of course. He paused, searching for the right words. What do you hope for, Elena? Not tonight, not this evening, but in your life, your heart, what do you long for? Elena looked away for a moment, her gaze following the fountain's water as it danced and shimmered. I long for connection, she said slowly, for moments that feel real. For someone who notices the small things, who sees me, truly sees me, even when I try to hide. Marco's fingers brushed hers again, firmer this time, grounding her words. Then maybe tonight isn't just chance, he murmured. Maybe it's the first of many moments, the beginning of something deeper. The fountain's sound seemed to echo their emotions, soft and persistent. Elena's chest lifted with anticipation, not of urgency, but of understanding. This night was shaping into something neither of them could have predicted, yet both had hoped for in some quiet, unspoken way. Do you believe in possibilities? She asked, her voice trembling slightly, charged with emotion. I do, Marco replied, his eyes never leaving hers. And right now, this feels like one of those rare possibilities where everything outside fades, and only what's real remains. Elena felt the warmth of his presence seep into her very being. The gentle brush of his hand against hers, the closeness of his shoulder, the way he listened, these were simple gestures, yet they carried a weight that thrilled her. Desire, she realized, wasn't always about fire or urgency. It could be quiet, tender, and persistent, growing steadily in shared moments like these. She leaned slightly toward him, their hands entwined, and felt a rush of anticipation mingled with comfort. Marco mirrored her movement, his gaze soft yet intense, and for a long moment, they simply existed together, two people connected by curiosity, attraction, and the quiet magic of the night. Finally, Elena whispered, I don't want this night to end. Neither do I, Marco replied, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. But perhaps it's only the beginning. The fountain sparkled before them, its water catching the lantern light like 1,000 tiny stars. Elena knew, in that moment, that desire wasn't just about longing, it was about discovery, intimacy, and the courage to share a piece of oneself with another. And as they sat together, hands intertwined, the night around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see where their connection would lead next. The night had grown quieter, the city asleep except for the soft trickle of fountains and the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. Elena and Marco wandered slowly, their steps unhurried, savoring the lingering magic of the evening. Every corner seemed alive with shadows and golden light, every street a secret path waiting to be explored. They paused near a small square, where a cluster of lanterns hung from wrought iron posts, casting delicate patterns across the cobblestones. Marco leaned against the edge of another fountain, watching Elena as she approached. You've been quiet, he said gently, his voice low, curious but not pressing. Elena hesitated, then smiled softly. I'm just taking it all in. Tonight feels like a dream, and I don't want to miss a single detail. He nodded, understanding in his gaze. It does feel dreamlike. But dreams can be real, if we choose to make them so. Elena felt a shiver run through her at his words. There was something grounding and exhilarating about Marco, a balance of calm and intensity that made her feel both safe and alive. She perched beside him on the fountain's edge, their legs close but not touching, their shared space heavy with unspoken possibilities. "Marco," she began softly, "do you ever wonder why some nights feel so significant? Like they change something inside you?" He turned to her, eyes deep and attentive. "I do. And I think tonight is one of those nights. It's not just about chance, Elena. It's about connection, something rare, something we recognize only when it appears." Elena's breath caught slightly. His words mirrored the thoughts she had tried to hide, the subtle longing she had carried into the evening. "I've never felt so seen," she admitted. "Not just noticed, but truly seen." Marco's expression softened, a hint of vulnerability breaking through the calm exterior he usually maintained. "And you are, Elena. I see you the way you notice small details, the way you speak, the way your presence lingers even when you're silent. I feel it, and it matters." The fountain bubbled gently beneath them, its water reflecting the lantern's glow like liquid stars. Elena reached out instinctively, brushing a hand against his. The contact was fleeting, yet it carried a current of emotion that neither had fully named. Desire, she realized, was no longer a quiet pull, it was alive, persistent, and quietly thrilling. "I want to know more about you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just tonight, not just this moment, but everything, the things that make you who you are." Marco's hand moved slowly, brushing against hers, fingers intertwining naturally. "Then we'll share it," he promised, his tone deliberate yet tender. "We'll take time. There's no rush, only discovery." Elena felt a warmth spread through her chest. There was trust in his words, a quiet assurance that made her feel safe to let go, to explore this growing bond without fear. She leaned slightly closer, and he mirrored her, their shoulders brushing. The proximity was intimate, electric, yet gentle. "Do you believe," Marco asked after a moment, "that some connections are inevitable? That certain people appear in your life not by chance, but because you're meant to meet?" Elena thought about their evening, the fountains, the quiet streets, the laughter, the glances, the shared silences. "I think I do," she said softly. "I believe we were meant to meet tonight. And maybe it's only the beginning." Marco's gaze softened, lingering on her as if memorizing the curve of her smile and the way her eyes caught the lantern light. "Then let's not waste a moment. Let's be present in this, together." They remained on the fountain's edge, hands intertwined, watching the water ripple beneath the lantern glow. The city around them faded, leaving only the quiet intimacy of two people discovering a connection that neither had expected, yet both had desired. Elena realized that desire wasn't always a rush or a fire, it could be subtle, patient, and enduring. It could be found in shared glances, light touches, and the gentle assurance that someone sees you, completely and without judgment. And tonight, by the fountain, that desire had grown into something more, a promise of connection, a spark of intimacy, and the thrilling anticipation of what the future might hold for them, together. The night stretched on, endless and full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long while, Elena allowed herself to believe in the quiet, powerful magic of desire, soft, patient, and unforgettable. The first hints of dawn painted the sky in soft shades of rose and gold, and the city began to stir gently from its slumber. Elena and Marco found themselves once again at the fountain, where their evening had begun, a place that now held the weight of their shared moments, laughter, and quiet confessions. They sat on the stone edge, hands intertwined, letting the cool morning air brush against them. The fountain sparkled in the early light, water dancing like liquid sunlight, and Elena felt a serene warmth in her chest, a quiet fulfillment that had grown steadily since the moment they first met. "Can you believe how the night passed?" Elena asked, her voice soft, almost in awe. Marco smiled, his gaze meeting hers with gentle intensity. "It feels timeless, doesn't it? As if the city itself slowed down to let us exist in our own world." She nodded, a small laugh escaping her lips. "I never imagined something like this could happen one evening, one meeting, and yet it feels like I've known you far longer." "Perhaps," Marco said, "time is less important than moments that truly matter." He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, his thumb brushing over hers. "And tonight, every moment mattered." Elena felt her heart lift at his words. There was a quiet strength in their connection, a sense of understanding that went beyond attraction. It was about presence, trust, and the joy of discovering someone who saw you completely. They leaned back slightly, watching the fountain's gentle ripple and the city waking around them. The world felt softer, quieter, somehow more intimate in those early hours. Elena felt an urge to speak, to name the depth of the emotions that had built over the night. "Marco, I feel. I don't know how to describe it," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not just desire. It's closeness, understanding, and something I didn't even know I was waiting for." Marco turned toward her fully, eyes warm and steady. "I understand. I feel the same. There's a calmness, a certainty in being with you that I've never experienced before. It's rare." The fountain's water shimmered, reflecting the early sunlight, and for a moment, everything around them faded. There was only the two of them, the warmth of hands clasped, the quiet smiles, the electricity in the simplest touches. Desire had grown into a tender, enduring connection, one that neither needed to rush nor force. Elena rested her head slightly toward Marco's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his presence. "I don't want this night or us to end," she whispered. Marco's arm moved naturally, wrapping around her shoulders, holding her gently yet protectively. "It doesn't have to," he said softly. "This is only the beginning. We can carry us into every day that follows. We'll discover, share, and grow, together." Her heart swelled with a quiet joy. She realized that desire, when intertwined with trust and connection, could be gentle and patient, powerful yet comforting. It wasn't just about fleeting passion, it was about knowing someone, being seen by them, and allowing yourself to see them in return. The first birds began to sing, their songs filling the air with promise. Elena lifted her gaze to Marco, eyes shining with gratitude and anticipation. "Promise me something." "Anything," he replied. "Promise we'll always make time for moments like this," she said, a soft smile on her lips. "Even when the world rushes by, even when life gets busy, we'll remember the fountain, the night, and the feeling of truly being present with each other." Marco's smile mirrored hers, tender and sincere. "I promise," he said. "Always." They sat in companionable silence, watching the water sparkle, feeling the quiet magic of the dawn, and letting the world awaken around them. The night had brought them together, the fountains had witnessed their connection, and the early morning held the promise of many more shared moments. Elena felt a gentle peace settle in her chest. Desire had led them here, yes, but what remained was deeper connection, understanding, and the quiet joy of knowing someone could see you completely, without judgment, without pretense. As the sun rose higher, spilling golden light across the square, they finally rose from the fountain's edge. Hand in hand, they walked slowly into the awakening city, hearts full, minds calm, and souls quietly intertwined. The night had been magical, the fountain eternal, and the desire that had started so subtly had blossomed into a bond that promised endless possibilities. And so, by the fountain where it had all begun, Elena and Marco stepped into a new day together, carrying the memory of a night filled with gentle desire, tender discovery, and the beginning of something unforgettable.